For a lot of people, getting a mortgage is one of the biggest financial transactions they'll ever make. So it's important that they're protected from unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts or practices throughout the lending process. You know, UDAPs. The Dodd-Frank Act directs the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, to oversee and work to prevent UDAPs. This prohibition against UDAPs applies to every stage and activity of the loan process, ranging from loan origination to the establishment and launch of a marketing campaign, from servicing and collections all the way through to the conclusion of the customer relationship. The CFPB also recently extended its review of UDAPs to fair lending. In doing so, the CFPB advised that they would be looking at a financial institution's decision-making in advertising, pricing, and other areas to ensure companies are appropriately testing for and eliminating unfair and illegal discrimination. Violations of UDAP can be found, even when strictly complying with the applicable laws and regulations. The CFPB could still find violations of UDAPs if they find any practices to be confusing or misleading to consumers. The U in UDAP stands for unfair. An act or practice is considered unfair when it causes or is likely to cause substantial injury to consumers, an injury is not reasonably avoidable by consumers, and the injury is not outweighed by offsetting benefits to consumers or to competition. So what's considered a substantial injury? It typically takes the form of monetary harm, such as fees or costs paid by the consumers because of the unfair act or practice. However, the injury does not have to be monetary. An actual injury is not required. A significant risk of concrete harm is sufficient. To clarify, an injury is not reasonably avoidable by consumers when an act or practice interferes with their ability to make informed decisions or take action to avoid that injury, it occurs without their knowledge or consent, and it can only be avoided by spending large amounts of money or other significant resources. The D in UDAP stands for deceptive. An act or practice is deceptive when the act or practice misleads or is likely to mislead the consumer, the consumer's interpretation is reasonable under the circumstances, and the misleading act or practice is material, meaning it's likely to affect a consumer's choice of a product or service or conduct regarding such product or service. Deceptive acts or practices can take the form of a representation, including implied representations or an omission. So what can you do to avoid deceiving consumers? Ensuring that claims are supported before they are made will minimize the risk of omitting material information and/or making false statements that could mislead consumers. And to determine if the consumer's interpretation of the information was reasonable under the circumstances, when representations target a specific audience, such as older Americans or financially distressed customers, the communications should be considered from the perspective of a reasonable member of the target audience. It's important to be clear in the way information is disclosed and disclaimed. An act or practice is abusive when it materially interferes with the ability of a consumer to understand a term or condition of a consumer financial product or service, or it takes unreasonable advantage of a consumer's lack of understanding of the material risks, costs, or conditions of the product or service, a consumer's inability to protect their interests in selecting or using a consumer financial product or service, or a consumer's reasonable reliance on a covered person to act in their interest. And finally, the last two letters of UDAP stand for acts and practices, unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts and practices. Now let's take a look at two of the most common UDAPs. They are deceptive marketing and solicitations, and failure to adequately disclose material terms and conditions for credit products. So it's incredibly important that your advertising materials are as clear and transparent as possible. Major violations may require the elimination of the act or practice and repayment to consumers. Violations can also result in an enforcement action by the CFPB or state agency and applicable penalties. Public knowledge that a financial institution is involved in UDAP violations through publication of a cease and desist order or reports in the media can result in reputational harm, lawsuits, and financial penalties for the company. And failure to prevent or address any potential UDAPs may expose the financial institution to questions regarding the capability of its management and the safety and soundness of its operations. To help reduce UDAPs, financial institutions are required to act in the best interest of customers, offer loans that are understandable, not steer customers to loans they cannot repay, comply with minimum standards for mortgages, evaluate new products for features that could be misunderstood or that have been omitted, offer loans with no prepayment penalty, regularly review consumer product features and promotional materials, and evaluate written and oral methods of communicating product features to consumers. Got all that? Remember, UDAPs can cause significant financial injury to consumers, erode consumer confidence, and undermine fair competition in the financial marketplace. So it's very important that UDAPs are eliminated throughout the lending process. Thanks for watching.